All right, I think we'll get started here today. So hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today for the Behavior Change Training webinar as a part of our PlayCleanGo Awareness Week webinar series. PlayCleanGo is next week, or PlayCleanGo Awareness Week is next week, so definitely stay tuned for that. But we're hosting this webinar in partnership with our partners, the North American Invasive Species Management Association and CNABIO, which is the National Commission for the Knowledge and Use of Biodiversity. So thank you to our partners for helping us to share this webinar today. So just a little bit of introduction on some of our organizations of the partners presenting this webinar today. I'm with Invasives Canada. We are the national voice, the non-government voice and hub to protect Canada from the impacts of invasive species. We run with a 4-chamber board with representation from governments, industry and businesses, Indigenous organizations, as well as our chapters. And our chapters are represented by provincial and territorial invasive species councils across Canada and are a really important part of how we learn from what's going on at the ground, as well as implement some of our programs. So with these partners, as well as others, we collaborate to deliver key tools and resources to stimulate action to prevent the spread of invasive species across Canada and beyond. And on the right there, you can see just a few of our programs, and including our Take Action programs, as well as some of our other projects that we work on. So you can check those out at invasivescanada.ca. And with that, I will pass it over to our partner from the North American Invasive Species Management Association, Christy Trifone Millhouse. So thanks, Christy. I'll pass it to you now.
Thank you, Gabby. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for the Behavior Change Training webinar. We're grateful for our partnership with Invasives Canada and energized to be here as we prepare for PlayCleanGo Awareness Week. For those who may be newer to our network, NAISMA, the North American Invasive Species Management Association, is an international nonprofit that connects federal agencies, provinces and states, tribes, First Nations, municipalities, researchers, and on-the-ground practitioners. Our mission is to empower all of you in the invasive species field and throughout North America by strengthening the systems, standards, and partnerships that make coordinated invasive species management possible across borders. Next slide, please. At NAISMA, we provide the tools, the connections, and the collective voice needed to address invasive species challenges. We do this through programs like PlayCleanGo, professional development and educational opportunities through NAISMA Academy, standards and certification programs, webinars and conferences, and initiatives that support collaboration and awareness across North America. If you're interested in learning more about our programs and resources, I encourage you to visit our website, naisma.org, and consider becoming a member of our community. Today's webinar is a great example of that collaborative approach in action. Through our PlayCleanGo partnership, NAISMA, Invasives Canada, and CNABIO are working together to share ideas, learn from one another, and advance invasive species prevention. Thank you again to Invasives Canada for hosting this training and for your leadership in advancing coordinated outreach across Canada. We're grateful for your partnership and excited to continue building this work together. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Yolanda Barrios from CNABIO, Mexico's National Commission for the Knowledge and Use of Biodiversity. Yolanda?
Thank you, Christy. Yes, CNABIO is a federal agency, and we are the National Commission for the Knowledge and Use of Biodiversity. We compile information on all of biodiversity in Mexico from different sources, including academia and local communities, and we function as a bridge between them and also between policymakers, making information available and in a language that can be used by everyone. We are the focal point for international agreements, such as the CBD, and as such, we have led national invasive species activities, such as the national strategy and the development of our invasive species list in Mexico. We have received several international awards as a focal point on biodiversity information, including a special mention by President Obama's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. We have been working with NAISMA since 2020 through a memorandum of agreement, in particular for PlayCleanGo, and recently with all of NAISMA activities, which make this NAISMA a truly North American organization.
Thank you so much, Yolanda and Christy, for those introductions, and we're very grateful for your partnership as well. It's exciting to be able to host events and webinars as well as other initiatives all together. So thank you for those introductions, and now we're going to move into just a little bit of background on some of the PlayCleanGo work that we've been doing together. But just to give everyone on the call some background about the PlayCleanGo program. So this is a national, or I should say, cross-continent program that helps to prevent the spread of invasive species with a focus on the recreational pathway. So really cutting off that or addressing that pathway of spread through recreation. So we're talking about people carrying seeds, mud, and other invasive pests on their gear when they're enjoying the outdoors, whether you're hiking, horseback riding, biking, or any other outdoor activity. This program asks people to prevent the spread by cleaning off their gear before leaving the trail or other recreational area. So this is, as I mentioned, a large education outreach campaign that empowers outdoor recreationalists and applies principles of behavior change to support those changes in behaviors and the actions that we want to see. So this includes identifying barriers and benefits to the actions, removing those barriers to taking the actions we want to see, establishing social norms, creating reminders, asking for commitment through pledges, for example, as well as making it easy and convenient for people to take action. So since early 2024, the North American Invasive Species Management Association has led, in partnership with Invasives Canada and Cannabio, as well as members of the PlayCleanGo Advisory Committee, the development of a 5-year plan for PlayCleanGo between 2025 and 2030. So this is a strategic roadmap as well as a practical toolkit for implementation. It was developed collaboratively across the US, Canada, and Mexico and guides long-term growth, strengthens trinational collaboration, and increases recognition and adoption of the program. So you can find the 5-year plan. There'll be a link put into the chat where you can find it and learn a little bit more, but it goes through and outlines a shared vision, priorities, as well as actions that different organizations have committed to. And to just take a quick peek at some of the commitments of the plan over the next 5 years, they include to strengthen the identity of the program as an inclusive trinational prevention campaign, expand engagement with recreationists and important partner organizations, promote consistent multilingual messaging and tools with behavior change principles included, and to build long-term sustainability through diversified partnerships and funding. So a lot of great detail within the plan, so definitely encourage you to go take a look. And just wanted to take a moment to quickly acknowledge some of the partners. The partners I've already mentioned that have the logos on the right, but also the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, Alberta Invasive Species Council, and CONAP in Mexico that took the time to be a part of the advisory committee that NAISMA led to develop the plan. And with that, we can dive a little bit more into PlayCleanGo Awareness Week, which is just around the corner for us. So PlayCleanGo Awareness Week is really an opportunity to further engage those partners and recreationists on taking the action we want to see. It's also a time for us to implement some of those behavior change messaging that we'll hopefully learn about a little bit more about today. So there's lots of offerings and ways that people can get involved in PlayCleanGo Awareness Week. This year, we're also newly hosting a webinar series. So if you haven't already, please take a look at those webinars and register. There'll be 3 going on next week based in the US, Canada and Mexico. So covering a lot of different topics and sharing some of the great work by our partners. And with that, I'm going to move into introducing our speaker for the training today. So Ken Donnelly is the Executive Director of Invasives Canada, and this session will explore behavioral psychology, community-based social marketing, and practical strategies for motivating stewardship actions that help to prevent the spread of invasive species through programs like PlayCleanGo. So in preparation for PlayCleanGo Week, we really wanted to provide this webinar as a way for our partners to better understand how to improve messaging and outreach and stewardship on the land. So we really hope that there can be some key takeaways that you have from this webinar and are able to apply it to your work outside of this. So very excited for this webinar. And Ken has more than 30 years of combined research and behavioral psychology experience to foster positive individual behaviors and environmental conservation. For more than 12 years, his focus has been primarily on the human dimension of invasive species. Ken is a researcher, strategist, and trainer, as well as a speaker. So thanks, Ken. Very excited to have you present today, and I'll welcome you up to start your presentation.
Thanks very much, Gabby. Thanks, Christy and Yolanda as well. And I'm excited to be here with everybody. What I'm going to talk about is how to apply behavioral psychology to get people to take actions, new actions that they may not have been taking before. And I'm going to focus on PlayCleanGo because it's PlayCleanGo week. So let's do that. But also, just want you to keep in mind that this, what I'm going to talk about, it can be applied to many different topics, even getting your kids to brush their teeth before they go to bed. So wherever there's an action that you want to foster, then you can use these principles of behavioral psychology that I'm going to go through, but with a focus in the presentation on PlayCleanGo. So Gabby, if you could, Gabby's going to move the slides for me here. So before I get into the PlayCleanGo, though, I just want to talk about a study that was done in the US in 2015 at 34 different hospitals across the United States. And in that study, the researchers observed over 4,000 caregivers. 2/3 of them were nurses, most of the others were doctors. And they were checking to see what the compliance rate was for the protocols of washing hands. So during that observation period, there were 14 million hand washing opportunities that they observed. And unfortunately, only half of the time did the doctors and nurses that they were watching actually comply with the rules for washing their hands. And this would include, arriving to work. It could be moving from one patient to another. And it got worse in the afternoon. In the afternoon, compliance dropped 38% from what it was in the morning. And that extrapolates to 600,000 unnecessary infections, 35,000 unnecessary deaths, and $12.5 billion in added costs in the US annually. And that's in 2015 dollars. So why am I talking about hand washing when we're talking about PlayCleanGo? Well, there's a real gap that we have between with PlayCleanGo, in PlayCleanGo and in other areas between, and Gabby, if you hit, thank you, between the intention that people have to take an action and actually doing the action. And this is what's happening with those doctors and nurses. Doctors and nurses go to school for a very long time. They know all about infectious diseases. They know that it's very important that they maintain the clean hands to observe and comply with the protocols for hand washing. They're experts in that, and they know about how bad it is if they move infectious diseases around. However, as you can see from the study, they don't necessarily take the action. And we find this in PlayCleanGo, in all kinds of other different areas of invasive species work, but also in waste management work, a lot of different environmental works, we see this gap between intention and action. And next slide, please. This is such a true issue, this intention action gap. The psychologists have a name for it, and they call it the intention action gap. And what it teaches us is that we can't just convince people that something is a good idea to do and expect that the behavior will follow. If people are, if you do a really good job on communications and convince people that they should be doing something, it doesn't mean they'll actually do it. I'll give you another example besides the doctors. When I do workshops or speak, I usually start with the audience when it's a live audience, and I can see everybody. I ask them to put up their hand if they think giving blood is a good idea. Been doing this since 2020, from 2000, for 26 years. And I ask this question, and virtually everybody puts up their hand and says, yes, giving blood's a good idea. And then I just point to people in the audience, random people, and they say, what do you think that giving blood is a good idea? And I try about 5 or 6 people, and everybody can come up just right off the top of their head, the reasons why giving blood's a good idea. And then I say, well, that's great. Everybody thinks giving blood is a good idea, and you know why it's a good idea. So put up your hand if you've given blood in the last 6 months, last year. And I go back 5 years. And every time there's only a smattering of hands. And that's because in Canada, only 3.5% of Canadians give blood. It's not that much better in the United States. In the United States, it's 3.8%. And when I'm speaking internationally, whenever I go to another country or online, I check with the country that is that I'm speaking with, and I've never seen anything above 4%. So again, with blood donation, people believe it's really important. They know all the reasons that it's important. They've been convinced of that, but they're not necessarily doing it. Why we see so many blood donation ads on television, I don't know, because we don't have to convince people. We got to get them into the gurneys, and so that they're donating blood. So next step, next slide, please. So what are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to, do we think we're done when we have convinced somebody that they should do something, or are we done when they are doing it? So that's the difference between the intention and action. We can't just hand out the brochures and make people aware and stop there and assume that they're going to take the action, because it doesn't happen. So you have to keep working, and you're going to work on the action, and that's what we're going to talk about. So the next slide. In PlayCleanGo, it's pretty simple. I've maybe oversimplified it here, but we want people to brush and clean their clothes and gear before they go out on a trail or after they come off a trail. The gear can be bikes or ATVs or other items, but that's all we're asking people to do is brush and clean your clothes and gear. So let's focus on that action. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about 5 elements of applying behavioral psychology to this problem. So the first one is to do your research. It's really important to do your research. Never skip doing your research, because you may think you're an expert in knowing what somebody else thinks, but you don't know until you ask them. So on the next slide, very quickly, I can tell you that what we normally do, there's 4 elements of research that we usually use. We do literature reviews. We want to check to see if people have done some research in this field before, and if they have, to take advantage of that research. The second research method we use is surveys, and we use that more often than anything else. And we ask people questions, which I'll show you on the next slide. And we also use focus groups from time to time, but you can't extrapolate from 11 people in a focus group to a whole population of a place like the United States or Canada or Mexico. or even to a town that people are in. You have to have larger numbers. That's why surveys are really good. But if you're finding out there's a weird thing that came up in the surveys, say maybe for some people in some neighborhood that aren't doing something, you may go to have a focus group and pull people in and try and figure out what's going in that one place. So we do that sometimes, but not very often. Observations are the best, but not quite often they're not practical. But people tend to fib in surveys. There's some social pressure to say the right thing, and if people have if you don't know that they're doing that, then you can be fooled with the results. But observations, you sit there and you watch people and you record it, and that's the sort of the best source, but it's a little challenging. It can be challenging. Next slide, please. So here's what we ask for when we do surveys. We ask people if they are aware of the issue, and we ask them, do they have the right attitude? Do they think it's important to stop invasive species from spreading? Do they think it's important to protect nature or to protect species at risk? We need to know that because if they don't understand the issue and they don't have the right attitude, then you really have to work on that. But if they already have the knowledge and they have the right attitude, then you can move on to the actual actions. And you don't want to stop with just issues and attitudes. So in this case, with PlayCleanGo, we'd say, are you brushing your boots and your equipment? If they say yes, then we say, if not, why not? And then from that, we can find out what the barriers are. We can, if they say yes, they are, then we ask them why they do it. And then we can find out what the motivators are. So the barriers are preventing people from taking the action you want. The motivators, it's good to know that, because if people are being motivated by something, then you can use that something and leverage it in order to get more people involved. We also ask people these last three questions. It's really important if you're putting a survey together. Ask people, where did they learn what they do know at this point in time? And then ask them, how is the best way to reach people like them? Turns out that in almost every survey I've done in over 30 years, usually where they say they learned and what's the best channel to reach them on are two different things. So it's good to find out how best to reach them. And then we also ask, who do you trust as an expert? It's, now in this, when you have all of these influencers, they can make a big difference. Like, who do you trust? If you're talking about PlayCleanGo, maybe ATVers will trust somebody who's got an ATV show. But quite often it's like parks officers that would be trusted as an expert for information. Go ahead, Gabby, you can change that. So we've done the work for you, and this is what we're going to talk about in the rest of, or I'm going to talk about in the rest of the presentation. This is real data from a survey we did over 1,800 people. And when we asked we asked if they were if they were brushing their boots. I'm going to use just brushing their boots because it's shorter. Ask them if they're brushing their boots. And if they said no, and they said, why not? And what we heard mostly was a lack of knowledge, not knowing what to do, not knowing what the issue is, not knowing why they should brush their boots, forgetting to do it, or lacking the equipment to do it. So those are the three most often heard barriers. Next slide, please. So you've done your research and you know why people aren't taking action. You have to remove the barriers and leverage the motivators. I'm going to talk about removing the barriers. Next slide. So I look at barriers as being like friction. They're preventing people from adopting the new action, the new behavior. So it's like pushing a fridge up a ramp if you're moving into a new apartment or house or something. And there's a lot of frictions, forces just stopping you from taking this new action. It might be that you see the new action as being more difficult than the easy one that you have been doing. So you want to remove those barriers that are creating that friction. On the next slide. When you do remove the barriers, then people can, if you make it as easy to do as the current behavior, whatever they're doing now, it becomes much easier to get people to change what they are doing. So if you're asking people to brush their boots, if you put a boot brush station in the area, then it makes it very easy for them to do it. Next slide, if you take make it so easy to do that the new action you want them to take is easier to do than what they're doing now, then you're really, makes it much easier to actually get them to take the action. So removing barriers is really important. Let's look at the next slide. We'll go back to those barriers, right? So lack of knowledge, not knowing what to do, lacking equipment, forgetting to do it. Well, let's see what might solve those problems. Next slide. The PlayCleanGo boot brush station does all of that. People say that they don't know what they should do. Well, that's an informative sign that's on that boot brush station. It gives them the information about invasive species and why they should be brushing their boots and clothes. It also reminds people. People say that they forget, and it reminds them because they're strategically placed right at trailheads, right where people are walking through. So you almost have to trip over them to miss them. And it provides a sorry, there was can you go back one slide? So it's the lack of equipment. Yeah, go ahead again. It provides the equipment that people need in order to brush their boots. So forgetting education and the equipment, it's all wrapped up. The solution is wrapped up in these signs. It's a great aspect of the PlayCleanGo program. So next slide. So you've removed barriers. There's other ways to remove the barriers as well, but I'll use that as the best example. The next thing you want to do is, because you've made it very easy for people, you want to try and get a commitment from them that they will actually adopt your behavior and take that action. So let's look at commitment. This is a video that you're going to watch. In this video, there's going to be a woman who asks the people that, this is a just for laughs gag, and she asks people to watch a keyboard. They're standing outside of a music store. There's a keyboard with a little ribbon on it, and she's just purchased it. She asks people walking along the sidewalk if they'll just watch the keyboard while she goes back into the store to go to the bathroom. While they're watching, a garbage truck comes along and puts in a different keyboard and steals. You'll see that there's some people that use a barrier and they take the new keyboard away. When the person that's supposed to be watching the keyboard looks up, they see that the keyboard is being taken away in a garbage truck. And just watch, because what this person does is she asks the person, will you watch my keyboard? She gets a commitment from them, and then mayhem ensues, and you can see how they take action and how distressed they are for not meeting the promise that they had made. So Gabby, can you go ahead and
could you just keep an eye on my keyboard when I go to the toilet? I'll be 2 minutes. Thank you.
So you can see the strength of the commitments there. Next slide, please, Gabby. This is where the behavioral psychology really comes into play. People want to be seen to be consistent with what they say. That's something that is really important in our societies. So they tend, if they make a promise and make a commitment to somebody, they tend to fulfill that promise, because people who do not do what they say are not looked at very well in our society. But it also changes people's self-perception. So if I say to you, I will brush my boots and I'll brush my clothes to stop the spread of invasive species, I change my own self-perception. I see myself as somebody that takes action to avoid the spread of invasive species. This is I call this like internal peer pressure. You've changed the way you see yourself, and you put pressure on yourself to conform with what you said you were going to do. Now, when you get commitments, it's easy to get a verbal commitment, but it's better to get a written commitment, and it's really good to get a public commitment. A good example of public commitment for PlayCleanGo would be that if you asked a person for a commitment and they said yes, you gave them a sticker or a patch that they could put on their backpack or something like that that says, I PlayCleanGo. So it's really easy to do. The very important thing with commitments is you have to think commitment at each contact. Every time you're talking to somebody about PlayCleanGo or whatever else you might be promoting, think commitment at each contact. When I'm working on these things, I think anybody that comes within 6 feet of me is going to be asked for a commitment. So next slide, please. So I often end up writing scripts for people if they've asked me to do the research and develop a campaign for them. We find out what the barriers are. And I write scripts so that people in the field can answer or ask questions. And if they hear the barriers from the person, like I don't know what to do, I don't have the equipment, I forget, whatever it might be, then they're prepared with an answer to take away the barriers. And at the end of it, we train them to ask for a commitment. And that's the best time to ask for one, is after you've removed all the barriers. So in this video that I'm going to play, you're going to see that there's a woman who is with the Wild Spotter Network, and she asks somebody who's just been hiking about PlayCleanGo and invasive species. The woman throws up 3 barriers, and in just over a minute, this woman takes the woman from the Wild Spotters Network takes the 3 barriers away and asks for a commitment and gets it. So Gabby, can you play that, please?
Hi, I am Joanna.
Hi, Joanna. My name is Clarissa.
It is a beautiful day for a walk.
Yes, it sure is.
Clarissa, I am a Wild Spotter ambassador, and today I am speaking with people like you about how they can help stop the spread of invasive species.
What are invasive species?
Invasive species are plants and animals that are not native to an area and can cause destruction to natural areas by killing off other species.
Oh, that sounds awful. But what do I have to do with that?
Well, when hiking through an area like this, invasive plants or insects might hitch a ride with you by sticking to your boots and clothes. They can then drop off somewhere else and start a new population.
Yikes. I didn't know that. What can I do?
You can stop the spread of invasive species every time you start or end an outdoor walk. Would you be willing to do that?
I am afraid I can't. I don't have a clue how to do that.
Well, it is easy as play, clean, go. All you have to do is look for mud and dirt and remove it. And check for any parts of plants, like thistles, leaves or stems. Anything you see, just brush it off. Then go on your way. Can you do that?
I don't know. That sounds difficult.
It isn't difficult. You can just brush it off with your hands, or better, with a handheld brush. Will you do that?
Sorry, but I don't have a brush like that.
No problem, I can give you one. We are handing them out for free. See how I can use the brush on my pants and boots, and get into the treads with this pick? It is easy and only takes a moment. And it can make a big difference. Now, is there anything else that would prevent you from brushing your boots and pants to stop invasive species?
No, I can't think of anything.
Okay then, will you play, clean, and go?
Yes, you can count on it.
So you can see how she's removed the barriers and deftly got a commitment from the person. She outlasted the person. The person was saying all the reasons that she couldn't do it, and she just took the barriers away and then asked for a commitment. So that's a really good approach to take when you're working in the field of communications and education and seeking to focus on action. So the next slide, please. So you've got your commitment and from your target audience. Now, the commitment won't work on itself. People have to be reminded of what they're supposed to do. And so that's the next thing we're going to talk about is reminders. So next slide. So reminders, there's 3 elements of reminders that are very important. You have to have the right information. Remember the people that from the survey, and they said that they didn't have the right information. This sign is a clean, drain, dry sign. That's those 2 gentlemen have just installed it at a boat launch in British Columbia when that picture was taken. And it provides the information that people need to clean, drain, and dry their boat. Now, that information could be on a fridge magnet, right? But it's not going to be very useful on a fridge unless people are keeping their boat in their kitchen. Most people keep their boat outside and launch it. So you want to have that information when you want them to clean, drain, dry. So that's the right place. And to have it at the right time is when they need to have that information in order to do it right. So right info, right place, and right time. And these reminders are very strategic when we talk to people about, when we ask what would get you to take these actions, they often say signage, something to remind me. So next step. So here's one. I took this picture in an airplane bathroom. And when I lifted up that lid, I saw that sign that says, trash it, don't flush it. Clogged toilets delay flights. That is the right information at the right place at the right time. You could have that information on the card, the safety card, or wherever or whatever it is, in the seat pocket in front of you, and probably not see it there. But this is the right time you're making a decision. And that's why you want to get your information on what people are supposed to do, not on a billboard on the side of a highway, not on a fridge magnet. You want to spend your money getting this information in the place where you want people to take the action. So next one. And that's exactly what the boot brush station does. It provides the right information at the right place at the right time when people are going to get on the trail or come off the trail. Same thing for bike wash stations. Right info, right place, right time. Next, please. So you've reminded people, you have the reminders out and everything. Now, peer pressure is really important in these campaigns. Using peer pressure, we call them social norms in behavioral psychology, but using peer pressure allows you to leverage the actions that people have taken, the people that are taking your actions because you made it easier and you got a commitment from them and you remind them. Sometimes people are not, don't get on board right away, but they can be influenced by others. So the next slide, we're going to talk about using peer pressure. This video is an example of some research that has been often done in behavioral psychology. So can you play that, please, Gabby?
The Ash experiment is one of psychology's oldest and most popular pieces of research. A volunteer is told that he's taking part in a visual perception test. What he doesn't know is that the other participants are actors, and he's the only person taking part in the real test, which is actually about group conformity.
Please begin. The experiment you will be taking part in today involves the perception of line length, Your task will be simply to look at the line here on the left and indicate which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length. So, for example, if you...
The actors have been told to match the wrong lines. The volunteer will be monitored to see if he gives the correct answer or if he goes along with the opinion of the group and gives the wrong answer. In the first test, the correct answer is 2.
1. 1. 1.
Two.
1.
Once again, the correct answer is 2.
3.
3. 3.
3.
3.
The ASH experiment has been repeated many times, and the results have been supported again and again. We will conform to the group. Again, we're very social creatures. We're very much aware of what the people around us think. We want to be liked. We don't want to be seen to rock the boat, so we will go along with the group. Even if we don't believe what people are saying, we'll still go along.
1. 1.
1.
1.
Group dynamics is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology.
1. 1.
Next slide, please. So, as I say, group dynamics is one of the most important facets of behavioral psychology. So we want to use it. This is the innovation adoption curve. This curve shows the population of the target audience that you are seeking to influence. Now, this could be a whole country, it could be a whole town, it could be just people in your neighborhood. Generally speaking, you have about 2.5% of the population are early innovators, are innovators, and they'll get on board with something right away. Like they get the new phones, they get they get electric bikes before other people do, whatever it might be. And then you have early adopters who generally don't move that quickly, but they adopt fairly quickly after they get more aware of what the new thing is. The early majority and the late majority make up 68%. Like two out of 3 people are in the early majority and late majority. So those are huge populations, and they're a bit more challenging to influence. But as you get more and more of them taking your action, then the people to the right start to see this. So this is going to be explained in the next video, but I just want you to remember there's 5 groups here. And they're going to be referenced in this video, and it's going to explain how the innovation adoption curve works. And go ahead, Gabby, and play the video on the next slide.
Have you ever noticed that some people adopt new products or behaviors sooner than others? In 1962, Everett Rogers, a professor of rural psychology, developed a theory called the diffusion of innovations to explain this phenomenon. Rogers found that individuals within any society fall into one of 5 different adopter groups based on how early or how quickly they adopt an innovation. Rogers' theory tells us that if you want to promote the widespread adoption of a new behavior like these, you need to market to each adopter group differently, using distinct communication channels and messages. Let's look at each group to find out more. The innovators are a small but important group because they are always the first to learn about and adopt an innovation. They are risk-taking, adventurous, and like being on the cutting edge. The innovators are responsible for introducing innovations to the larger population because they share their experiences with their friends and communities. The early adopters are also a small, forward-thinking group and are often highly respected as opinion leaders. Their endorsement of an innovation plays a key role in what we call crossing the chasm, which is when the adoption of an innovation bridges the gap between the trendsetters and the majority. About 2/3 of people in a population fall into either the early or late majority groups. The early majority take time to make decisions. They will observe others' experiences and will only adopt the product once they are convinced it has real benefits and that it is the new status quo. The late majority are more resistant to change, though they are very responsive to peer pressure. They want innovations to be very well tested and widely used before they will risk trying it. Finally, the last group to adopt a new product or innovation is called the laggards. Laggards are highly resistant to change, and they also can be hard to reach with marketing campaigns because they often have very minimal exposure to media. Laggards wait until an innovation is completely mainstream before they adopt it, and in some cases, they never do. Think of some global innovations in recent years. Social media, for example, spread very fast and many people adopted it within a few years. Other innovations, such as the use of solar power, spread much more slowly and may take decades to reach widespread adoption. So the next time you're promoting a new product or behavior, consider the theory of diffusions of innovations and tailor your communication channels and messages. This will improve your chance of catalyzing widespread adoption.
Go to the next slide. So just looking at this curve again, if you get people that, if you go to a recreation area and you promote PlayCleanGo, some people may say, well, yeah, you're already getting these people that care about nature and care about the environment, conservationists. They're easy. Well, every time you have some success with those people, there's a better chance that they're going to talk to their family, their friends, whoever, and have some impact on the early majority. And as more people get in that early majority get involved, then the late majority sees that, and that's when you get past that 50% mark between early majority and late majority. That's when the social norms or the peer pressure really kicks in, because people are starting to go, oh, everybody else is doing this, I should probably be doing it too. The laggards are very difficult. Next slide. So I went through all of that because I wanted to introduce to you the new approach that the PlayCleanGo is using as part of that strategy that Gabby talked about earlier. The materials that you'll see during PlayCleanGo week are a little bit different than what you've seen before, perhaps. And you're going to see a lot of inclusion language where we think 7 generations ahead. It's the we. We're not saying you need to do this. It's we do this. And people with small families or small children rather might see themselves in the picture on the left. Older people might see themselves in the picture on the right. Our actions have long-lasting impacts, is what those people are saying. And always on the materials, you're going to see a call to action. The we clean boots, packs, and clothes every time. You're going to show exactly the action that should be taken. Next slide, please. Now, these are some images taken from longer carousels, so you don't necessarily see all of the actions in these images, but you can see that on the left, this is targeting people who ride bikes on trails. And not just to say, hey, you're a bike rider, but we are trail protectors. That's part of the identity of the people that like riding on these bikes on the trail. We are trail protectors. So if you're part of the community, you should be protecting the trail too. We know from experience that they often say clean is fast, meaning a clean bike is a fast bike. So they are meticulous. Those people that compete in races are meticulous about cleaning their bikes in between races because they know that the bike is faster if it's clean. but we're adding on and protects the places we love from invasive species. So again, that cohort of people who are out on the trails on their bikes, we're speaking directly to them, but we're saying, hey, if you see yourself in here, in these images, then you should be doing this too. Younger people are being approached on the right, and we're calling them nature protectors. Nature protectors prevent the spread of invasive species. And on the bottom there, it says boots, tents, and backpacks. Before we go, we clean our gear. And so it's very inclusive. Way to go, nature protectors. The next slide, please. So, and here what we're looking at with ATVers. So we ride with respect for the land. We know that invasive plants can hitch a ride on our rigs, undercarriage, tires, and wheel wells. PlayCleanGo. And this is part of a carousel. I didn't put the whole thing up there, but the next part shows where somebody washing those parts of the ATV more and with more we language. And the final one I'm going to show to you there is the way to go water protectors. So those are the people that, in this case, they've got a kayak and they may be arriving to launch it, or they may be portaging it from one place to another. But again, the we prevent spread between water bodies. And on the bottom right, when we go paddling, we PlayCleanGo. So that's the new kind of approach that we're taking. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, there's only 5 minutes left here, but I'm happy to try and answer any questions people might have.
Thanks so much, Ken. That was a great presentation. Lots of interest there. I'm just going to pull up the Q&A here. Looks like we've already got a question. And for those of you that have questions, if you can place them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, that is the best way for us to see them. So the first question, how do you reach folks that won't fill out surveys and who are very resistant to any requests by government?
It can be difficult to reach people who won't fill out surveys. Back 30 some years ago, when I was doing surveys, we used to do phone surveys, and you'd get about 60 or 70% compliance. Compliance with phone surveys now like around 2 or 3%. So they just don't work. But online surveys will work. Certainly, some people won't fill out surveys, but the good thing about when you survey is you don't have to reach everybody. You just have to reach a proportion of the population that gets that will allow you to do the math, the statistics, and have a reasonable error. And so the way that works is, believe it or not, for the entire United States, you would only have to survey 384 people in order to have accuracy of plus or minus 5%, 19 times out of 20. But you survey 2,000 or 3,000, 4,000 people. It doesn't matter really very much that you didn't reach the people that fill out surveys, because you can extrapolate. It's a very good question, Gary.
Great. And a few other questions that have come through. Do you know what messaging motivates people most to take part in invasive species prevention, protecting biodiversity, protecting outdoor recreation opportunities, economic motivation, etc.?
It depends on the person. So if somebody is very concerned about protecting nature or protecting species at risk, that's going to be a motivator for them. And so when when I write scripts for talking with people, I often ask, what do you think of when you're out here, to try and tease that sort of thing out. Interesting, like there's I won't go into too much depth here, but there's a very interesting thing about behavioral psychology is that people are much more concerned about loss than they are concerned about gain. So for invasive species, it makes sense to be saying, if you don't do this, then you can for instance, if you spread Phragmites because you didn't clean your your equipment, then that could mean that you'll impact turtles that can no longer get into their breeding areas for habitat or something like that. So I won't, as I said, I won't get into all the details, but loss is a big thing. For those of us who work in invasive species, you go to a conference, you always see that picture of that place in Toledo, a street in Toledo, and it has these majestic ash trees that are on each side of the street. And you see that 5 years later, after emerald ash borer is gone, all those trees are dead. That's a very compelling issue. But for some people that works really, really well. Quite often you want to be more uplifting. And I think those materials that I showed you are very uplifting. It really shows people enjoying themselves and being active together, and it shows inclusion.
Thank you, Ken. And we maybe have about 30 seconds left for a final question, if you can think of a quick answer here. But how do you measure if people are adopting these behavior change activities?
The best way is through observation. So just really quickly, what I would suggest is that at the beginning of, say, the beginning of a summer, you go and sit by one of the PlayCleanGo boot brush stations, and you count how many people use it and how many people walk by. And then you do a campaign there and try and promote it. And then maybe at the end of the summer, you measure again. And the next summer, at the end of the summer, you measure again. And that's the best way to measure if there's been an uptake in the actions that you're trying to promote.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Ken. Thank you for that great presentation and training. I know this was a rapid fire question at the end, but if you do have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to any of our staff and we can pass them on to Ken. And just wanted to point up here on the screen again, access to the different toolkit resources and contests, as well as the webinars for next week. But with that, I'd like to thank our partners again, NAISMA and Canabio, for your support and hosting this webinar. And thank you again, Ken, for your presentation. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye now.